Now then, you're welcome along. Happy St. Stephen's Day. Merry Christmas. I hope you're having a lovely, relaxing time with friends and family. And I am thrilled to come into work on this festive morning with Conan. Hello, Conan. Happy Christmas.
Joe, happy Boxing Day. I told you a week ago it's Boxing Day up in Derry. See, I like to call myself Irish, but it's Boxing Day at this time of the year.
It's a weird contradiction.
Sorry, are you being serious?
I have been Anglified, yeah. This is the culture that we grew up in.
What?
Yeah.
Sorry.
This is the vernacular.
I'm leaving. I only just rocked in, but I have to go.
Ronan Mullen, hi.
Hi.
Just, can you square two things for me?
Yeah.
You call it Boxing Day, legit.
Yeah.
You never met a unionist till you were 20.
18.
Let's not quibble.
Don't do me a disservice, I was 18.
How does that stack up?
Yeah, that's because we'd read the English papers. We'd get the English papers. They are the Northern Irish version of the English papers. We get UTV, ITV, BBC, like that. That was our main channels. We had RT and stuff, but you had to do workarounds back in the 90s to get those.
Jeez, that's mad.
Yeah.
I'm staggered.
Yeah, I just didn't think that St. Stephen's Day was an inaccessible concept of, we only had the English papers. That still doesn't answer the question.
I know, I'm going down to the local GA club, Steelstown, the Boxing Day game, the annual Boxing Day game, because this is the best part of the year. Yeah.
I'm not sure we can continue. Do we need to just do a do-over in terms of the running order?
No, that's look.
Clear the schedule.
Let's get the Christmas spirit back.
Okay. Well, listen, it's good to have Londonderry's Conan here in the studio.
You be careful.
But that's mad, isn't it?
I can't believe that.
I can't.
Yeah.
I thought you'd make a point of calling it this evening.
I tried to now, but it's only since I've moved down south that I'm like, actually.
So are you telling me James McLean and family call it Boxing Day?
I would imagine so. I don't want to speak for James McLean and family.
No. I'm not having that.
If you're from Derry, email in if I'm wrong. But I don't think I'm wrong. I don't know why I would call Boxing Day.
Imagine it was just the Dohertys up in
the Dohertys as well. What an embarrassment that would be.
Wild.
I'm just picturing people out for their St. Stephen's Day walk, and they're like, "What?"
There's no way. There's just no way. Sorry, I know it's difficult to make you speak for everybody,
but try it anyway.
Let's do it.
The nationalist community at large in the north, to the best of your knowledge, would call it Boxing Day.
Yes.
In the north or in Derry?
That's a good point, because I can't speak for the whole north, but I would have thought...
In Derry you would...
Yeah, but I would have thought...
Joe Brawley would call it Boxing Day.
I'm going to say yes. Yeah. Because the Boxing Day goal mile walk as well. Like the goal mile walk that everybody does.
Yeah, the Stephen's Day goal mile. I'm familiar with it. Okay. Well, look, that's thrown me.
Yeah. I mean, we still can't get some RTE games if we want to open up this whole podcast. I mean, this is where we're at.
That's all we've got time for.
Yeah. Shook by that news. We'll press on with our Stephen's Day Boxing Day special.
Our feel good St. Stephen's Day.
Clips are going out on our national broadcaster online saying content not available in your location.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, that's our big bugbear.
I didn't realise you were geo-blocked.
Yeah, it's mad. And
Virgin Media rugby stuff isn't.
We're good at that. When I worked in Virgin, and I got caught with it before at a programme that I produced. And then suddenly, I think it was with Joe Brawley. And suddenly,
oh my God,
the North couldn't get access to the clips that were put. I was like, oh my God, what's got even the show on the Virgin Media player? But we quickly changed it.
Yeah. Okay. So what we're doing here is not replaying you full interviews because frankly, they're too recent to play them out in full. So we're just taking you through some moments from our favourite interviews or more interesting interviews of the year. Ronan, you've picked out some of these. We are starting with Jim Gavin, who was, when he joined us, 2 days of a special Congress vote where every single rule was rubber stamped with an overwhelming majority, most votes in the kind of 90 plus percentile. And obviously it capped off a genuinely remarkable job considering the FRC was first mentioned in February of this year. So the timeline from February to where we are now is really very impressive to have pulled all this together. So he came into studio. Is there anything we want to say about this before?
No, as you said, it's a slightly different format to classic, like replaying a best of episode. It's kind of director's cut type thing. And just an interesting point that Conan made when Jim Gavin came in. It's like you see him in his statesman-like demeanour and the way he speaks to the media, and you're like, very impressive man, that's okay. But Jim Gavin, the coach, you're just trying to get a feel for that. Like, how did he tap into this generation and make them what they were? And I think myself and Conan were struck by Jim Gavin. You could see Jim Gavin, the coach, when he came into us, I think, like when he was chatting specifically about you as your coaching journey, Conan.
Yeah, I think Joe, you mentioned him that I was involved with Scary's Harps, and then he was mad to talk about that as well, and sort of showed, I suppose, the GA-ness in him as well.
We chatted to him, don't know, we said 10, 15 minutes afterwards. He was incredibly warm and incredibly chatty and incredibly charming. And that's not the persona, obviously, that we saw in post-match interviews for nigh on a decade.
Yeah.
I was like, my God, what a warm, friendly, lovely character, which is just that the 7 a.m. press conferences as Dublin manager, the post-match dealings where there was not even a glimmer of personality in there, all very deliberately done, obviously, and well thought out for his own reasons. But it was an eye-opener into Jim Gavin, the person.
He was like animated as well, like his body language. It sort of reminded me of me. Sometimes I think I'm a bit too handsy and stuff. And Jim, not that he was handsy. Let's get that on the record.
Energetic.
Yeah. And I could really see. I found how difficult it must have been for him then. Remember in those post-match, like never mind interviews, at the final whistle when they win the All-Ireland, takes his earpiece out, shakes hands. Geez, that must be really hard for him to maintain that, because the Jim Gavin I got, albeit for 15 minutes, was somebody who would be absolutely loving that. Like, the real dub, the real GA man in him must be bursting with excitement.
Yeah. Well, we'll play you a section from the interview. Look, in the main, the rule changes look really, really exciting. I mean, it's easy to quibble and it's easy to pick holes and it's easy to have one or two that you don't like. But I think in the main, considering they were trying to bring the whole GAA family with them, they've done a remarkably good job. The one area that I kind of wanted to get his thoughts on was, to be fair to him in the panel, because it's unknowable, how will all this play out in practice? Championship games, do or die, as Darragh O'Shea said in his piece, when managers are acting the bollocks and not trying to, play to the spirit of the rules. So we'll jump in at that section. And by the way, in the example I use here, I know Shane Walsh and Damien Comer were carrying injuries. A few people kind of said that to me. My point still stands. They would have been able to run 30 metres. They weren't that injured. So we'll jump in here where we're talking here to Jim about how these rules may play out in practice. And I have some worries about some of them. And I used the All-Ireland semi-final from last year as an example. Do you have a vivid memory of Galway-Donegal last year in the All-Ireland semi-final?
Don't have a vivid memory, but I remember the game.
Yeah. So I was at it and it was very interesting in that McGuinness's Donegal went 2v2. So Walsh and Comer man-marked entire half to themselves.
Yeah.
And I would say almost with certainty, not once did Galway turn over possession somewhere in their own halfway line even, and think, there's Shane Walsh with a one-on-one. He's going to make run, I'll pop it into him.
Yeah.
Every single time it was possession, check back, turn away from bodies, hand pass. And we're going to take our merry time here to march up the field.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of thinking, in a way, that was like an interesting example in an All-Ireland semi-final. Like the setup, I mean, is what the FRC might be interested in, like a 2v2. I mean, let's play the odds here. This Pork Joyce is the manager. I mean, if any team are going to... And it was really interesting they didn't. And so say that's a 3v3 next year. And I didn't enjoy that game. I thought there were amazing points being taken, which covered over what was a very lateral game.
Yeah.
I sat there, I thought, this isn't very good. The points are good, but the game isn't good.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, 3v3 next year, they play each other in the same in the same semi-final. I just still think when it gets down to it, those kind of stages of championship, that pressure, I still think Galway man wins possession, check back, hand pass, take our time. Well, I don't see why he's more incentivized to kick it into a 2v2 now than he would be with a 3v3. What's changed?
Well, it's how what you're as a coach, as a team, what are your principles of play, what's your philosophy in football. I certainly know the Dublin players would have been hunting out 1v1s. If you see a 1v1, the ball is only going one way. That's up to the 1v1. Then it's up to the corner forward to win your own ball. If you can't win your own ball, we get somebody else on the can. So that would have been so it's all to do with coaching philosophy and teams how they see the game to be played, and will they exploit that 1-to-1 rather than wait for a 2v1 or a 3v1.
I mean, I hope they do. I think that's back to Darragh O'Shea's point that the trial games, there was an air of... I watched the trial games and look, I think what you've done here is brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to it because I love Gaelic football. I've played it all my life. It's I want this to succeed. But I watched those trial games and I said, there's not a top level manager in the country that's going to tolerate even a tenth of these number of turnovers. It's not worth it. No way. I think Joyce is as shrewd as it gets. And he knows, geez, if anyone understands the joy of a 1v1, it's Pádraig Joyce.
Yeah.
And even in that, at that level, Galway and Joyce said no.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. We're taking our time. And actually, there's an argument that now that our keeper can join and we have a 12v11, the incentive is for us to keep the ball even more so and work our keeper into the opposition half. And then we've got all sorts of set plays with a 12v11, and that's how we're going to beat Donegal. That'd be my fear.
Yeah, so that scenario is already there. So you would have seen the All-Ireland final where, the last couple of attacks where, Donegal, Armagh defended in depth, conceded an outfield play, set up their defensive line, the goalkeeper supported. So you had 14 outfield Armagh players inside of 45 against probably 6 Galway forwards, another 2, that's 8, then up to 22 players, and other remaining Galway players on an arc outside trying to break that zone and that zone defence down. So you can already overload the goalkeeper. So there's nothing has changed here in that respect. The only thing that's changed is that it's 11 defenders versus 11 outfield defenders versus 11 attacking players. Like we were asked on a number of occasions, or the feedback I got was, to reduce teams to 13 aside, to create more space. Now teams can, the well-coached teams can still create a lot of space. The Gaelic football pitches are 90 metres in width in Croke Park. It's a wide pitch, so there is opportunities, but it can be quite pedantic and it can be quite time-consuming to do it, but it can be done.
Yeah.
But I give you a scenario. Imagine with 1 minute on the clock to go over a point down. And they decide, you know what, we're going to try and work a play to get Shane Walsh onto the ball to kick a 2-point score, or we're going to try and work it inside to get a Damien Comer for a 1 point. And what do Armagh do? Well, do we push out onto the 40 metre arc because we don't want to lose this game? Mm-hmm. But if they do, there's space inside. That's why the arc is there. It's trying, incentivise, because 5 things people want to see. One of them is long range scoring, and if there's any skill that gets, well, obviously a goal. But there's limited enough goals. If you get like 3 goals in the game, 2-1, that's been a good game of football. So it's the long range scores that can get people out of their seats, or high fielding. That's what they're the skills of the game.
No,
so from an Armagh perspective, do they push out? And if they do, well, the other reason for that arc there is that it creates space inside for either a goal or for a point. And I don't think it devalues a point at all. Once. Again, what's your philosophy? To keep the scoreboard ticking over, just keep building attacks, and if you keep getting the 1-pointers, well, then they're going to sit back and mark for the 1-pointers, which creates space outside. So these are the things that coaches are going to think about how they exploit that.
Yeah. Again, look, who knows? We have to see it play out. I do wonder, take that Galway-Donegal game as an example. I don't know what really incentivises less of the lateral safety first, keep possession, tone to that game.
Yeah, and the only thing that would get rid of that is a shot clock. It's the only thing that get rid of it. So you incentivise, hit the clock once you have the possession, and you got to score like in basketball, 24 seconds.
Were you close to?
No, we discussed it, and one of the provinces, said we think that's a good idea. When we went down to Laois, Port Laois with the Leinster, somebody, the delegates that. Some of them said, that because we were at that when we went on our roadshow. Probably back in April maybe, with all the provinces. So we, our governance structure is Central Council. We always brief them first, then it's provincials, then that's the way it has to be. And in fairness to the Gaelic Writers Association, they and the media in general, they were very good to us in terms of promoting the work that we're doing. So there was, we heard words like "be as radical as you want" from some of the provinces, which was a great endorsement to just have a look at everything. Don't have an open mind. But I think the practicalities of it, it just wouldn't work at club level. Whatever about in Thurles or in Páirc Uí Chaoimh or McHale Park, but to having it, just wouldn't work. So
agreed.
So these are, but this is the game, and we're not trying to come up with a new manufactured game. If teams want to play that possession type game, you can still do it to a lesser extent, but the option now is that you can, and you would have think the Connacht team trying to lure the Niall Morgan into a trap, and they did set some traps from late in the game. So what you could see there was straight away the coaches were adapting on the fly. And just to go back to the provinces, I know people said like there was I wouldn't say it was a timid game. I met the players. I was in some of the dressing rooms before the game. I've been in enough dressing rooms to sense a tenseness in the dressing room, of a focus. They were going out just to kick a ball around. I know from speaking to all 4 managers, it was a competition. They wanted to. They understood they mightn't win it, but they wanted to do that, put their best foot forward. So from a player's perspective, I think it would be disrespectful to say that it was a timid game, because it wasn't.
Physically committed, hard running, all of those things. I just thought there was a touch more air of adventure and less risk aversion than we are going to get when a player's season is on the line. That's all. That's a natural thing.
You have just presented a case, Joe, to have. That's why we have these in the National Football League.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen,
and at club level, which I was very. We were very pleased that the Congress took that decision last week.
Sorry, this is no one's fault. This is just you have to go through the process, and we're going to see it fully borne out. But it's not like you could suddenly drop these into an All-Ireland final to test them. You have to go through a process. It was the only way to do it. I suppose the two areas people are slightly, this could be trickier, and they're linked is at club level, and you guys were absolutely clear, we want this taken on board, club level and inter-county. Let's not have a split here. Yeah. And that passed at 93%. So everybody agreed with that point. But so club level, refereeing standards, the markings on the pitch. I mean, it's interesting things. So, you've been conscious of that. The shot clock. How feasible is that at club level? So it's not like you're suddenly striking the FRC. God, the clubs have to do this. You obviously feel you've just about pushed it as far as you can for it to work at club level as well. People are talking about things like pitch markings and, God, how can a referee who's trying to get him down a pitch at club level see, God, was his foot inside or outside the arc? This kind of stuff. Do you accept that point? Do you have a concern, or are you pretty confident?
We do accept it. We do accept it. And we do acknowledge that in the current game, referees make mistakes. Could be a square ball, could be a penalty, could be an off-the-ball instance behind the referee's back. He doesn't see it. Could be a sideline ball. Ball could have been over the bar. Might have been wide. He's got two club umpires that are arguing with each other. So it's not a perfect system. The closest you get to it is probably at championship level in the counties. So it'll be intermediate championship, junior championship, senior, where you've got two neutral line umpires and obviously a referee, and maybe a neutral umpires as well. And obviously at an inter-county level, that's a given. So, and that will all help referees at championship in both inter-county and club level. But we do take the point on a November's evening down in West Clare, Cora Clare against Doonbeg, and referees on their own. What are they supposed to do? The clubs can help. The clubs can help by marking their pitches. It's quite clear in the rule book what way the pitch should be marked. So that's just an excuse from my perspective. How can we help the referees as well as in terms of the education piece? So we've a call later on this week with Donald Smith, who is the referees coordinator, and his team in Croke Park about rolling out that plan to inter-county referees. There's a call next week with the coaches. Then we've got club referees following shortly thereafter. So there's a full program activity now for the next 8 weeks. We'll take a little break maybe Christmas week. And that's been coordinated by Croke Park. So this is, FRC in some ways will, shape the direction, but the GAA itself has to own this. And then the rules themselves, as I said, the rules for the scent, the rules for the late fouls, the rules for black carding, handing ball to the back. We've seen lots of instances where players hold on to the ball and all this, and players come in, the melee, the black card. Yeah. This will make the referee's life a lot easier. And they're not going to be getting badgered on the sideline.
It's brilliant.
Because if they are, the ball's being brought up.
Yeah.
So that gives the referee a little bit more capacity to focus on officiating the game.
Okay.
Then the 3-3, which is the one people say, how will that work? And again, all I've seen with my eyes in the Meath regional tournament is the players adapt very quick. First game, I saw, one team broke it 3 times in the first game, and twice was by one player who just got lost, and he was told fairly lively from his manager, don't do that again, because he was conceding obviously a point. So the punishment to the crime is so severe. So we're disincentivizing teams to break down. And of course players will try it. we'll bring an extra player back. That could happen. Like players and coaches bend, will break the rules.
Darrow Shea's point, yeah.
But if you're caught, if the referee sees that you've only left 2 players up and there should be 3, he simply gives you free against you. And all of a sudden it's the point. And then players are looking around it. Who broke the line? So that's so, not to become self-policing, but the habituation, and all of us who are involved in coaching, we play games, 1-touch football, take 2 hops of solo, 1 bounce pass, pull a sock up, kick your drops of foot. Like, for our generation, Joe, you and me, it's probably more difficult to get our heads around it. For a 10-year-old, a 14-year-old, 16-year-old, our education system provides, develops critical thinkers. They'll just say, because they're playing multiple sports. We played 3-3 up in football. That's the rule, Jim. Fine. And they get on with it. And then when they get through to senior level, the whole bit about the give respect, get respect is, and that was a key part for us as well, is that, if there's 6 chapters of football rules, there's a chapter on its own for dissent. So people long before my time have said that this is an issue. It has its own chapter, which we really found surprising. And you give any colour of cards, black, yellow, red, for dissent, it's still a problem. So in not in all instances, but it still is an issue that needs to be addressed. And anyway, in society, young men and women, young boys and girls, diversity, respect each other. They just don't. It's not in their. And I would find it difficult, maybe even to look life through their lens. We have a huge bias from our age, and we see things differently. And all the roaring and shouting in the classrooms and all the stuff that went on when we were growing up, that simply is not tolerated in schools, in society, from the younger generation. So this will be easy for them. Yes. It'll be harder for us.
Well, that would be good if referees could be treated better. Let's say this our generation, by the way. Will you stop? I'm not in your generation.
Oh, you're not?
I hope not. Have you had many instances where, like, you think of the kind of circus that goes with VAR in the Premier League and like, is the toenail just offside, that kind of stuff? Have you had many instances with the kicking from outside the arc for 2 points where it's like, where is this?
No, I haven't seen that. Okay. And of course that could happen. Yeah. So if your foot is on the line, that's okay. So we had that quite quickly, rather than if your foot on the line, you're off the line. So foot on the line, it's okay, which means as your momentum takes you to kick the ball, you might be 39.5 metres or 39.8 metres just inside the line. But once your planted foot is on the line, that's okay. That's the rule. So that should make it easier.
And you pray to God an All-Ireland final doesn't come down to a zoom in and look, that's life. That can happen.
That can happen with penalties. They picked the ball up, and I was involved in lots of games where players picked the ball up in 95.
What game are you talking about? Oh yeah,
that would be in Peter Gavin in 95.
So famously.
So these instances happen anyway, and I think the association had a look at VAR, and I'm not sure it's a way direction we want to travel, but it's not that wouldn't be my call.
Okay. So your overarching thoughts, you seem very happy with how the year has gone. The reaction from 7,000 people giving you their opinions, the way the FRC has worked, the way Congress have embraced the changes, and now it's showtime. But you seem very pleased with how.
Yeah, we are. Of course, we are. Yeah, like we're on track. That's probably the summary of what I'd say. Like I've been impressed, as I said, with the in summary with the clubs and the delegates. Their level of knowledge when we went around to all the FRC members took different counties. We're just very impressed with their engagement, their understanding of it, the probing questions. But what's evident is there's an ambition to support the vision that the association has to make Gaelic games, and this isn't Gaelic football, the most exciting amateur game in the world to play and watch.
There you are. That is Jim Gavin. Full interview. Like all the interviews in this episode are available, very easy to find in our podcast feed. We will push on to our second interview of this episode, Ciara Mageean. Ciara Mageean, fellas, needs no introduction. On the go a long time, prodigy, are pretty close to prodigy. The next Sonia, really good at junior Olympic or junior games, underage games, terrible Achilles ankle injury. which, as you'll hear in a moment, came back to revisit her in the other leg. But that really knocked her off kilter. Had surgery, early 20s. Jerry Kiernan to the rescue, nursed her back psychologically, physically, got her back to a huge level. 2017, she moved to New Balance, Team New Balance in Manchester. And I would say for the last 5-6 years has been in kind of a golden period of her career, where she's been competing at world level very seriously. And that maybe culminated this year with a gold medal at the Europeans in Rome. And you would think, my goodness, perfect timing ahead of the Olympics. This is the games for her. Her age, the trajectory of her career, this is the one. And then on the eve of the games, we all saw Ciara Mageean has withdrawn for the Olympics, injured. So we'll get to the playing out of that in a moment. We'll hear from Ciara herself. She came into studio last month to talk about it all. It's still raw, I think, for her, as you'll hear. Like she's not moping or not, she's able to function, but you can still see it's very close to the surface. It's brutal, is the unfortunate truth.
Yeah, like you made a point in your preamble when we did the interview that, we're not supposed to have favourites in this game or whatever, but like it's just someone we would have spoken to down the years, and she's always been so giving with her thoughts and her time. Especially this would not have been easy to speak about, and
she wasn't promoting anything. There was no agenda, just to say. She just came in to do an interview, which is an old-fashioned concept.
Yeah, and like when Jerry Kiernan passed away, I remember speaking to her then, and again, just so open with her thoughts. I think it was like having spoken to her for so many hours down the years. I think it was the first time you actually met her in person, was it?
No, it was weird. I went down to reception. I said, "Nice to meet you." No, it's weird.
It's funny.
Yeah. And we had a good chat for maybe 15 minutes beforehand, and then we had a good chat afterwards. And she's going to go after LA with absolute vengeance.
Yeah, I find that incredible, the fortitude that some people can have. I mean, she just spent 5 years trying to get ready for Tokyo. She spent another 3 years trying to get ready for Paris, on the eve getting it taken away from her. She spent 8 years trying to get to the Olympics, and then 4 years out from LA, obviously in her 30s now, still thinking, I'm going to be there. Like, it's inspirational, obviously, but just the level of strength and grit and resilience is unbelievable and hard to fathom, and obviously very admirable.
Yeah, for sure. Well, she's moved back home, by the way, away from Manchester, and she's going to take real control of her own training over the next, how many years? 3 years. So that's the plan. She's come back and she's going to really take charge. I guess she has enough experience and knowledge now to do that. So here is Ciara Mageean talking about the days, the weeks leading up to Paris when brutal reality manifested.
Certainly this summer I sat and talked to my boyfriend Thomas, and I said, why is it so unfair for me? Now, don't get me wrong, look, I got knocked out of an Olympic Games. I run in circles, and I know that there's so much bigger things in life, and quite often it's good to look at that in perspective. But in my little world, it's everything.
Yeah.
And I think some athletes might go through their career with one major surgery. Now I'm on my second. And I cope with all of the normal niggles that athletes cope with throughout their career. But I've had 2 major ankle issues that ultimately I think were always going to be an issue for me. There's nothing that I could have done about bone spurs that were in my heel. Having studied my physio degree, I know exactly that some of us have them, some of us don't. Some people are asymptomatic, others will feel symptoms. With the sheer amount of training I do, I feel the symptoms, and it resulted in me missing Olympic Games. But yeah, the timing, if it had just happened the week after, I wouldn't mind missing Diamond Leagues. To be knocked out of an Olympics in a summer where you were running really well. Entering that championship as European champ, 4th place finisher in the world last year. I was really coming in the best position I'd ever been. And yeah, I feel slightly robbed, to be honest.
Yeah, you were robbed. It's a sickener. I couldn't believe it when I saw the news. I just thought, you are joking.
Yeah.
Tokyo calf injury robs her of that. European champion. And again, to explain to people, the trajectory was so good. Like, it's obvious why you didn't go for some kind of preemptive surgery, because you have, in 22 you win silver in Munich in the Europeans. That's a very good season. And then in 2023, you finish 4th in the World Championships in Budapest. So 4th in the world, you run 356.61. So you're 0.6 of a second off Hassan in 3rd in the World Championships. in September of 23, you also run a PB at the Diamond League in Brussels. So 23 is building on 22. And then you come along in the summer of 24, and we've just heard the commentary, you win gold medal at the Europeans. But obviously, like when you're having this great 2023, you're not suddenly going to say, well, I think major surgery is the plan now. You were a victim of how well it was going. And like you were perfectly entitled to say, okay, the pain's no fun, but we've just won gold in Paris. I can smell, we've just won gold in Rome. I can smell Paris. It's here, and then we'll deal with it afterwards. So I don't even think you can beat yourself up for the not having the preemptive surgery. There was no window there where that would have made sense, really. And I'm sure you've asked yourself that question.
Oh, I have, and I've wondered if I had done it years ago, before this glistening period in my 30s.
Yeah.
But look, hindsight is a wonderful thing, and every season you're building on the next. And whenever you think you're going from strength to strength, even whenever it is the lower echelons of comparing where I am now, it's a build on that. And you make it through this summer and you think, okay, I coped with that. I'll continue to cope. And I suppose you don't quite notice it escalating ever so slightly, because year on year it was getting probably worse and worse.
Was it? I was going to ask, was it like a pop or was it an escalation?
Just a very slow creep of that. And don't get me wrong, periods of time where I'm feeling particularly sore now without any real reason why. The training load might have been similar to the year previous, but you're just a little bit sore and you're thinking, okay, is there something I'm doing diet-wise? And okay, make sure I'm hitting my anti-inflammatories, and am I resting enough? Am I sleeping enough? Yeah, look, the human body is not an exact science at times. We're trying to figure it out. The weather and how I cope with the warm and the cold might have an impact. And but one thing I will say has always been a real issue is being in my spikes, because they're just such a more aggressive shoe. And the fact that my heel was so sensitive, thanks to all of the bones rubbing and that bone spur in the back, the bursa was just angry as hell. And it would result in me not being able to walk to the toilet in the house. I'd be shuffling along. If I sat on a chair and pulled my foot back and tapped my heel off, say a little leg of the chair or a bit that goes, I would yelp. It was that painful. I couldn't run after I did a training session. So typically I would do a training session on, say, a Tuesday morning, and in the evening I'd do a 4-mile run. They had to be ruled out completely. I was cross-training instead for the past few years. Used a little system called like a lever system on a treadmill. It was like bungee cords to try to help me run again post-session. You're making all these little changes, and I'm well aware I'm not the only one. Other athletes cope with stuff, and we adjust our training and we cross-train to try to cope with the load. But yeah, there is nothing I could have done different. I was managing it as best that I could. And yeah, look, we put our bodies on the line, and we put our lives on pause to pursue our sport and careers. When it did give, and it was just something ever so slightly, a little tweak, more pain. My last good hard training session before the Olympic Games. And sometimes you hear people being like, oh, well, was she being silly doing something really hard? No, it is a bread and butter session that you have to do before a major champs. You're not going to go into the Olympic Games having jogged all the way. It was just a last key session, tick it off the box, got through the entire session, and in my last 200 metre rep, I was like, oh, that just hurt a little bit more. But the week prior, I could barely do my cool down. And my friend Yip, who was out helped me through it. And she said, we're going to just cut it down. We'll do a 10-minute cool down. I would go immediately after the session, get a bag of peas, ice my heel while I was having lunch down in Italy. But yeah, that particular session, I'm fortunate enough to have had my boyfriend Thomas there supporting me, my really good friend Yip Fastenberg, who's been an absolute rock as well, and my sports psych Kate Kirby, all at the track. And I walked over and Yip was like, for God's sake, walk properly. Do you can rely on the Dutch to deliver a good direct. Yeah. And I was like, Yippie, it's actually a bit more sore. And she's been through her fair share of injuries in her career, and she understands it, and she knows me better than most runners. I was like, I'll try to jog. And I started jogging. I was like, yep, I can't jog. So I jumped on a bike, and I knew the fact that I couldn't even ramble around a little gentle cool down. I was like, this isn't good. Rang my sports doc, who John Rogers, who was actually working with the British team for the Olympics. And thankfully he was in a vicinity, but he had just left St. Moritz. Unfortunately for me, he arranged an MRI. And do you know what? I have to say kudos to Irish athletics, to all of the sports staff through Sport Ireland and through our Olympic committee, because they as soon as I called in and said, look, I'm having a bit of an issue, they went all hands on deck. I flew into the village early. They put me up in a little hotel room just outside of the village to give me privacy.
You did go to the village.
Yeah, I was. Right. I wasn't. I didn't actually live in the village. Unfortunately, I was in a little hotel room separate, just to give myself some privacy. I didn't want my counterparts to see me limping around. That doesn't do great. Yeah. And believe you me, I was like, I'm sorting this. It's a week. I'm getting it sorted. A week's time.
What are we injecting in here? What am I taking?
That's exactly it. What is the solution?
What TUEs do we need? And we'll get this. Like it doesn't matter how I feel in 2 weeks. Whatever damage is done is done. I'm running. I presume that was your attitude.
That is exactly it. You're like, what is the step that we can take? So sat down with the doc. We had they had a very good physician in the village who worked in the French Institute, and our sports doc had liaised with him. They had discussed what the options are, and I sat down with him, and he said, look, these are the things we can inject into the tendon. You have a tenosynovitis. If we settle that down, it might be helpful. We can inject into the bursa. One has higher risk than the other. And I'm like, okay, right. Well, we'll do the lower risk one first. We'll see if I get a good response from that. If I don't, we'll go for the higher risk one. So went in, injection into the sheath of the tendon. No huge difference. Okay, on to the next one. Injection into the bursa. Now, this is something that I had been asking, could I receive for a number of years if it would help, but was always told it was just too risky. That because of the years of abuse through my Achilles and through that area into the bursa, there was a bit of communication, they said, between the bursa and the tendon. And anybody who knows about like tendon health knows that cortisone anywhere near a tendon isn't good. It has a degenerative impact on a tendon's health. But when you're a week out of the Olympic Games, you weigh up the risks with the
degenerate
rewards.
away. Yeah.
And the fact that the immediate risk isn't there, it's over a number of weeks. So it's hilarious whenever I look back now. I chatted to the doc and I was like, okay, right, well, we'll get this. Now I'm hoping to not finish my season until, well into this part of the season. So are you telling me if I do get it and I get to race, I should probably cut my season short because my tendon will be at its highest risk in 6 weeks' time? They're like, that would be advisable. I can't help but admire my positivity and the sheer optimism I had that, one, these were going to fix it and I was going to get to run, and two, I was going to finish out the season. I didn't anticipate. And do you know what? I couldn't even let it enter my head because in that moment you have to have sheer belief that you're getting back. And there was only a handful of people that knew the struggle that was happening right there. I didn't even open up to my mum and my dad because I didn't want to worry them, for one. But also I hoped that I didn't have to burden them with that stress and that it would be fine. And I'd go into that line and after I'd go, oh, geez, I had a nightmare last week, but we're all good. Yeah. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And as the week progressed and I was trying to rehab it and I was trying to work it, it was clear to see it wasn't improving, that it had finally given up the ghost. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
When, in relation to your first race, did you make the call?
The day before.
Day before.
Yeah, okay. I was convinced, no, I'll toe the line. And
were you on the track doing a fitness test, or were you able?
I did, yeah. I headed down. It's hard because I could tell this medics and the support staff around were like, this isn't looking good, but they can't. They gave me every bit of positive information I could and realistic information as well, and told me the risks and what those risks are, and I was determined to toe the line. So I said, if I need to be racing on this day, I need to do a training session Wednesday or Thursday, because if I do toe the line, I still have to have a good training week in me to sharpen up and get ready. So I determined that was going to be the case. I headed down to the track to carry out the training session that was planned, and I couldn't make it through the session, unfortunately. And it was very tough because Thomas was there. I finished a rep and he was like, how was that? I was like, I'm really struggling to run that fast. And he's like, what is it? And I'm like, I just can't do anything on my right foot. And I realised that it had gone beyond the stage of this is painful, and to the point where it just wasn't working. My foot was hitting the ground and I had no toe off. It would just land and that was it. Nothing. It was like landing on a little peg. I did a 200 metre stride, adjusted the session, did a 200 metre stride, probably hit a 31, 32, which is nowhere near what I would hit. Yeah. Thomas was like, can you give me a 30? I was like, I'll try. went out, tried my best. I was like, I'm struggling to hit a 30, and I would be doing 28-second 200s, bread and butter, just sharpening up. And really, it was that moment that I realised. I walked with Thomas around the track, and I was like, can we just walk? And well, he said, look, do you think you can hit a 62-second lap? And I was like, I don't know if I can. And he's like, do you think you could finish a 1,500 metre race? And that was probably the hardest part, because I was like, I'm not sure. And you can't toe the line in Olympic Games.
I was wondering, because you've got to a certain level, is it just beneath you to jog on and say, well, I'm a 3-time Olympian even though I didn't finish?
Yeah.
Was there a temptation in that, just to say 3-time Olympian even though it would have been so beneath your ambitions at this stage?
There definitely was.
Okay.
There definitely was, because I said, this is my 3rd Olympic Games. If
It's a big achievement, you know?
If I don't toe the line, I'm not a 3-time Olympian. And yeah, and I'm not now, because I didn't toe the line. I was everywhere, made it to the exact village, and I didn't get to toe that line. And but when I chatted to Thomas, he reminded me that I'm not here to show up, that simply making an Olympic Games is not my goal, that I'm here to compete. I came 4th in the world last year. It's not about participation for me.
Wave to the crowd, it's not that,
Yeah.
And did you agree with him?
I did.
Yeah.
I did, because I've been in positions where I've turned down selection for a World Championships because I just wasn't fit enough, and I knew I wouldn't make it through the rounds. And it was tough, because I knew that there was a little part of me, but he was like, 1-time Olympian, 2-time Olympian, it doesn't matter. If you walk away from Olympic Games with a medal in your pocket, or a top 5 finish, a top 10 finish, whatever is the best that you will achieve in your career, that's the thing that you're going to remember from the sport, not just racking up a sheer number of participation medals.
That's that in many decades from now, that's the first line in the obituary: 4th in an Olympic game final, or 3rd or 5th or whatever in the world. That defines you ultimately, not. And
it was tough. And like, I chatted to Ricky Sims, explained to him, I was like, look, Ricky, I'm having a very rough time.
I'm having a bad day, Ricky.
Yeah, I says, and look, I suppose sometimes it's good having people like that in your corner. Ricky was like, yeah, I've been here with X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, you're not the only one it's ever happened to.
Yeah, and you know what? It was probably a good thing to be told. He said, I hope you're not moping in your room. And I laughed. I was like, yeah, I am, yeah. I am, Ricky, actually. He's like, right, well, he was like, get down and warm up, and if you can toe the line, you can. If you can't, you pull out there. I realised that actually I wasn't even going to get to...
it's done.
I was like, I know going to bed that night that I can't run. So, yeah, whenever I had to make the decision, I walked in to chat to the doc again to ask him if... in the 24 hours since I'd seen him last, was there any more revelations, any magic cure that I could be given? And look, he's like, Ciara, I have a duty of care for you as well, to look after you and your health.
Yeah.
And we've done as much as we feel that we can and should do. And he was like, and I was like, any more pain relief? And he's like, I don't even think the pain relief that we can put in would take away the pain you're feeling and help bring back that function. So I was like, okay, right, thank you. I'm taking a little moment. So I walked down to a quiet spot in the village with Thomas, and we sat out looking over the river. And yeah, it was pretty tough to say, okay, I'm going to make the call. And yeah, sat there and cried and told me he had to walk away because he's so funny, he's very stoic. And he was like, he didn't want me to see him cry. So he was over there, and I was like, right, I'm going to ring my family first. They're the first people that found out. So I rang my mum and dad and my siblings who were together, told them. And I can tell that they were heartbroken for me, but because I had met them for dinner early in the week and kind of told them that things were a bit rough, they were prepared for something.
Okay. Not total shock.
Yeah. And like always, they were like, it's okay. Are you okay? Yeah, my daddy's like, is Thomas there with you? I'm like, he is. Okay, that's good. You have each other. We're here whenever you want to come to your family. And then I rang my auntie Adele, who I'm really close to, and she said the same. And yeah,
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to cry on you.
No, no.
And yeah, they're very, the advice they gave me is, Ciara, and I was like, you've come all this way to watch me in Olympic Games. And they're like, here, we'd go to the lengths and breadths of the world just to watch you have a walk. It's not about that. It's like, we're here for you, not for the track. And I sat with Thomas and composed ourselves, and we're like, right, okay, this is the decision. It's what I have to do. And Tommy said something that just really struck a chord. He said, look, you're a European gold medalist. And he's like, you did that in Rome, and Italy was something very special to Jerry. And he's like, I don't know. Maybe there's something in it. LA was Jerry's Olympics. Maybe it's a sign. So I sat in those little steps, decided that I was withdrawn from the Paris Olympics, but I've had my sights firmly set from that moment on LA. So in that really tough moment, I was like, right, this is not going to be my last memory of an Olympic Games. It's not going to be my last memory to have 2 Olympics where I feel like I've been robbed. I am going to make sure that I'm on that track in LA, fit and healthy. And I hope that I've had my fair share of bad luck, that I am due some good luck. But yeah, and then began the process. I chatted to the doc, chatted to Athletics Ireland and the Olympic team. And thankfully for me, they managed everything else.
Okay.
And I can't thank them enough for the support they gave me there, because, that's worst case scenario for a sporting organisation, to have to deal with an athlete having to withdraw at the last moment. To try to help them cope with that, and also manage the expectations from elsewhere that they really protected me from. So I can't thank them enough. And it's it's those jobs that go unseen that, our general public don't realise the people that are there.
There's good people there.
Yeah. And we have a fantastic team behind us in Ireland, in Athletics Ireland and in Sport Ireland, and through our Olympic committee. So yeah, thank you to them.
Yeah. Oh dear. Sucks.
It's rough, isn't it?
It's terrible.
But if you don't laugh, you cry, so we need to get laughing.
Yes, yeah. Ciara Mageean there, as with Jim Gavin, full interview in your feed. One more guest to bring you this episode. Steve Bunce has written a book, Around the World in 80 Fights is the name of the book, where in a sense, this is not a ranking of best fights in history. These are 80 fights he has attended personally. And he's offering recollections of, it's not kind of po-faced, as in he's just going for all the ones you should pick. He's also picking things like Mayweather, McGregor, and all the tawdry elements within. So it's that kind of a book. Bunce and Costello, 2 of Ronan Conan favourites. No coincidence. They've both appeared early on in this podcast.
Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Half of them have been on.
So Steve Bunce, one of those characters in boxing. Is Steve Bunce like... I don't know how to phrase this respectfully.
The Wayne Mardle of the boxing world.
The Wayne Mardle. Are there people in boxing who are like, oh, Bunce, showbiz? Or is he generally very, very respected? I think Mike Costello, everybody would kind of say, oh yeah, there's a boxing man.
But it kind of speaks that they were such a great double act for so long. It's the yin and yang element to them, where, they're both very good broadcasters, but just in a different way. Yeah. And maybe there's an argument that Costello had a more, I don't want to use the word palatable necessarily, but he was just more of he'd colour inside the lines. Whereas Steve Bunce was a bit more rogue in that regard, and he more opinionated. And as the colour analyst, he was at liberty to do that.
Very informed opinions.
Very informed opinions.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. So I was kind of asked, are people in boxing going, geez, Bunce doesn't know his arse from his elbow?
No, but there's a bluster about how he delivers it, but the man has watched more boxing than anyone.
That's my sense.
He's going to all these different amateur tournaments, and it's reflected in the book, because it is a warts and all account of boxing, and he's seen the entire spectrum in that regard. He's seen the sport at its best, and as you mentioned, stuff like Mayweather, McGregor, which drags it in the wrong direction, and you know, he's very accessible as well for non-boxing fans. I think it's an engaging chat.
We have met before. You will not remember this. Do not worry about that. We have met before. So there's a moment. It's getting on a bit now. We're getting old. March 2011. Do you know where you were in March 2011?
Yeah, I'm going to say the Point in Dublin.
You were in City West, slightly less glamorous.
City West for Guillermo Rigondeaux.
Yes, against Big Bang Willie Casey.
Big Bang Willie Casey, a fight that they couldn't put in Willie Casey's hometown, and Casey lost really early. And guess what? He lost really early, and they probably did the wisest thing by moving it from his hometown, if I'm not mistaken.
It was quick. It turned out that Rigondeaux guy was good, yeah.
Oh, shoot, he was good, yeah. And I tell you what, do you remember there was a moment when the fight finished? In fact, they should have made the book. I'm a bit disappointed now you've said it. There was a moment when the fight finished when there was a chance that the crowd could have ripped him apart, taken him home in their pockets. Each one of them could have had a little tiny bit of Guillermo Rigondeaux. And there was just a point where he just made a play to be nice to Willie, and then he smiled at the crowd and he won the crowd over. And of course, I'm not saying that was the start of Irish boxing's love affair with Cuban boxing. That had already started with Martinez, the coach. But it certainly solidified that love affair, and it still continues to this day. Do you remember Big Tyson Fury was there with a full head of hair?
I was just going to say, so you were working in commentary in the fight, and I was kind of part of the production staff in the background. And after the fight, you said to myself and the other people working, you said, "By the way, I want you to meet this kid. I think he's going to do something." And this giant with a big head of hair comes over. He said, "Everyone, this is Tyson Fury." And we sort of said, "Hey, Tyson, how you doing?" So I don't know what became of him.
Do you remember? I don't know what became of him either, funny enough. But do you know why he was there? He was there, obviously, he was there because Mick Hennessy, his promoter, was trying to exploit his Irish roots, the whole Team Fury, Clan Fury, as they called it. But he also took part, and I think he got something like about €50. He took part in a program that was being put together by Patsy Barrett. You know, the kid who carried the flag, Francie Barrett, who carried the flag in 1996, the first traveller to carry the flag at the Olympics, the boxer. Well, Francie was doing a thing tracing his DNA, and they did a DNA test on Tyson Fury. I mean, this is all completely spurious and ridiculous, but it's lovely stuff. So they took a DNA test on Tyson Fury, and they found out that he was related, of course, this is a shock, to some like 7-foot giant in Irish history. But the kicker is, and the twist to the story is, and Tyson tells it very well, is that this giant, this heroic warrior from 400 years earlier, was a woman. So he was related to this infamous Irish 6'9" Irish fighting woman with a giant sword. I've never found her. I've never bothered. But maybe she exists. Maybe she doesn't. It's possibly best if he doesn't exist, because then it's a better story.
So the premise of the book is you pick out 80 fights that you've experienced in different ways, or things to say about in different ways. You have been working in the business now since 1984. Broadcaster, people won't be shocked to hear, obviously. They know you are already, and writer and journalist. You say in the prologue to the book, we'll chat about some of the fights in a moment, but you say in the prologue, when you are up that close, as in ringside, when you're working at the fights, when you're up that close, every punch and moan and cry is loud. You can feel it, you can smell it, and when the blood's flowing, you can touch it. I've had blood on dozens of my shirts, on my face, my writing hand, my notepads over the years. It's evidence of a mad addiction. What is it about boxing for you?
Well, I boxed from the age of 9 till about 16. So I was around boxing people, and I was around boxing gyms for an awful long time. And I kind of fell into the writing caper, as I call it. And it really was through a backdoor kind of stuff. I mean, it wasn't a backdoor straight to the top. So there was no like imaginary snakes and ladders. It was a backdoor to running quotes, i.e. at fights, just grabbing and garnishing quotes for a couple of different writers, one of whom I knew and one of whom I was introduced to. So basically I'd go to fights, small fights, these would be like British title fights, or maybe a Commonwealth title fight, or European title fight, and X, Y, or Z would be in the ring, and I'd be charged with rushing to the dressing room to try and get a couple of quotes. I had no idea what shorthand was, but I'd come back with a couple of quotes and give it to the guys at ringside, because they were filing live copy, and they'd give me 25, 15 quid, 18 quid, a tenner, literally that type of stuff. So I came into it through the back door. So the first couple of years were not very glamorous, to be perfectly honest with you. They were just hard, old-fashioned grunt work. And I'm not sure there's a steady replacement for that, to be perfectly honest with you. You've got to be at fights. To cover any sport, you've got to be at the games, you've got to be at the matches, you've got to be at the event, you've got to be at the fights. You can't cover anything unless you've covered it. And I've just got an old-fashioned feeling that you need to cover it at some kind of early, not necessarily grassroots level. I don't want to sound unbelievably cliched, which doesn't mean I live in the past. I think most of the boxers we've got now would beat any of the boxers we've had in the past. But from my point of view, as in my business, writing about boxing, talking about boxing, broadcasting about boxing, I think you need to have started at a fairly low level to appreciate what it's like lying on a bed going to Saudi Arabia for 7 days of being luxuriously driven around the ridiculous city and covering things like Usyk and Fury. Because if that isn't ridiculous, then nothing's ridiculous, to be perfectly honest with you.
I'll get on to a choice of yours in a moment. Who, though, is your, and you can interpret the question as favourite or best or most impressive. You've seen so many fighters. Who has a special place in your heart, or why?
Little Naz for British boxers, because I think he's still misunderstood. And globally, Roberto Duran, because it's just staggering what he did and for the amount of years that he did it. But little Naz, I'm not quite sure. Even now we realise just how exceptional he was, just how brilliant he was. And just how big he would be right now. We talk about how big Ali would be in the social media age. Well, little Naz would be just a millisecond behind him. So little Naz, domestic-wise, for me, but globally, Roberto Duran, because I just find his career is just ridiculous, you know.
And in what way?
And the man knocked out a horse, for God's sake. It's fun.
And in what way is Naz misunderstood, Steve?
Because he still gets abuse for losing close to the end of his career to Marco Antonio Barrera. But, you know, I was really close to Naz, really close to his family, really close to him. And I know how many years Barrera avoided him until Naz had started to lose his weight on the outside of the ropes and had got rid of the great whispering guru from Dublin, Brendan Ingle. He'd got rid of him and he'd gone to another trainer, and that trainer didn't have really access to what he was doing. So Barrera was monitoring it. So Barrera fought a fraction of the Naz. You know, had Naz got Barrera 4 years earlier, it would have been a different story. And people were pricing themselves out of fighting Naz. Nobody wanted to risk fighting Naz at his absolute peak. The moment Barrera beat him, every man and dog was stepping forward. So I feel that people need to maybe respect that. And he said some things that upset some people. And he was quite confrontational with the media. He was ahead of his time. He was just fearsome. You know, people talk about, you know, guys being big bangers and punchers. Naz would drop people with any punch, either hand, going any which way, with 1 foot on the floor, no feet on the floor, 2 feet on the floor. And these were good fighters. And the press at that time, and it was just about the end of the old guys I'd grown up with and I'd been reading before I even started writing. The average age at ringside then was mid-60s to 70s. There was like half a dozen men who were closer to 70 than they were to 60. And Naz was their kind of last fighter. And they've been around throughout that whole, you know, from the Cooper days in the late 60s, 70s, all the way through the boxers in the 70s and the 80s, all the way through the Bruno period, all the way through Conti and Charlie Magri and Barry McGuigan. And suddenly they were left at the arse end of their careers with a kid who hated them, a kid who they knew absolutely nothing about. They could not understand this kid. They could not understand how he could put 1,200 people, 1,500 people, 12,000 people inside these arenas. What was the attraction? He's knocking out bums, they said. And then when you actually look at it, he wasn't knocking out bums. He was knocking out guys from Italy who the Ring magazine said was the European Fighter of the Year, who'd never been on the floor. Naz dropped him twice, won all 12 rounds to win the European title. I mean, these are not invented facts. I'm not inventing this. That's how good Naz was. He was a movement. He was a game changer. He changed and altered the boxing business as far as I'm concerned. And I think sometimes he needs a little bit more respect.
There is the brilliant Steve Bunce speaking to us. I just keep saying last month. Was it last month?
Ah,
How long are we doing this?
Since the podcast began.
I think it was, I came 16th of September.
It was in October.
30th of September, I think, was our first day, me and Conan in here.
yeah. Well, you came in the 26th, did you, or something?
No, 16th.
16th?
Almost certain 16th of September.
Because I remember you said to Jim Gavin, we've been doing it 4 weeks or something. I was like, "Jeez, we've been doing it for 9 months, Jim.
Yeah. No, I think 30th September. So October, basically. I think Bunce was November. Can't remember.
Yeah.
Why am I labouring the point?
Doesn't matter.
Jesus. This is how arguments happen over Christmas. Just spit it out. It doesn't matter.
30th of September. That's still September.
Someone's listening. It was X.
Okay. That was your St. Stephen's Day, Boxing Day, little reminder of some of our interviews from the last 3 months. And tomorrow we will bring you another little recap with some thoughts, memories of Paul O'Connell, Paul McGinley, Jenny Gow. So that's tomorrow's episode. I hope you're having a lovely Christmas.